From Washington, this is VOA News. Ukraine forces launch an anti-terrorist violence. U.S. Secretary of State Kerry is stirring negotiations in South Sudan. I'm Vincent Bruce reporting from Washington. Ukrainian security forces began a major anti-terrorist military operation Friday in the city of Slovyansk, despite warnings from Russia against attacks on pro-Russian separatists. VOA's Brian Padden reports from Kyiv.
Yekaterina Kosoreva, spokesperson for the Ukrainian Security Service, said the operation was a simultaneous assault on the main checkpoints manned by armed terrorists around Slovyansk, and as of noon local time, anti-terrorist forces had taken control of 10 checkpoints around the town. 2 Ukrainian helicopters were shot down and their pilots killed. The Ukrainian Security Service said one of the helicopters was shot down with a surface-to-air missile. Kosoreva says the use of this weapon proves these are actions of highly trained, highly qualified foreign military specialists. Brian Padden, VOA News, Kyiv.
Meanwhile, Russia called an emergency session of the UN Security Council Friday and accused Kyiv and the West of destabilizing Ukraine. VOA's Margaret Bashir reports from the United Nations.
Russian Ambassador Vitaly Churkin called the meeting to protest Ukraine's operation in the east to clear buildings of pro-Russian separatists. Churkin told reporters ahead of the session that Kyiv had begun a crazy punitive operation in the east using heavy weapons and air power, which he said was a despicable act of violence, leading Ukraine into catastrophe. In the Security Council, he was equally forceful, telling his counterparts that the West must stop its destructive policy in Ukraine, and he directly accused the United States and European Union of supporting and encouraging the instability. Margaret Bashir, VOA News, the United Nations.
More on these stories at voanews.com. The United Nations Refugee Agency says one of its workers was kidnapped and killed in the Central African Republic capital. The agency says the worker, a CAR national, was abducted Thursday morning in Bangi's PK-16 district, and that his body was recovered a few hours later. A UNHCR public information officer tells VOA the killers presumably belong to the anti-Balaka militia, but investigators are still gathering details. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is trying to arrange direct talks between South Sudan's president and the country's top rebel leader in hopes of ending 4 months of deadly violence. Kerry spoke to reporters in Juba Friday. Kerry later spoke by phone to rebel chief Riek Machar. U.S. officials say Machar did not make a commitment to attend talks, but also did not rule it out. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control has confirmed the first case of the deadly Middle East respiratory virus, or MERS, within the United States. CDC officials Friday said an American health care worker who recently traveled to Saudi Arabia has been hospitalized with the virus in the Midwestern state of Indiana. They say the patient has been isolated and is in stable condition. 276 teenage girls abducted from a school in northern Nigeria last month remain unaccounted for. Borno State Police and intelligence officials raised that estimate of the number of missing late Thursday after complaints from parents who said earlier numbers in the mass abduction April 15th were too low. The mass abduction took place on the 15th after suspected Islamist militants attacked the town of Chibok. A massive landslide triggered by heavy rain has killed at least 350 people and left thousands of others missing in northeastern Afghanistan. The governor of Badakhshan province said more than 2,000 people are still unaccounted for after the landslide buried around 300 homes Friday. UN officials say 350 people are confirmed dead. A judge in Northern Ireland has granted police an additional 48 hours to interrogate Sinn Féin leader Gerry Adams about the 1972 killing of a Belfast widow and mother of 10. The police service of Northern Ireland confirmed its detectives had received the required extension in a closed-door court hearing Friday. Under British law, police could seek a second extension Sunday night. Adams, a leading opposition figure in the Republic of Ireland, was arrested Wednesday for questioning in the abduction and murder of Jean McConville, a 38-year-old executed by the Provisional Irish Republican Army as an accused spy for British authorities. Her body was secretly buried and found decades later in the Republic. Stocks in the U.S. on Friday: Dow Jones, S&P 500, and the NASDAQ all lost points. For more on these and other stories, visit us at our website, voanews.com, 24 hours a day. I'm Vincent Bruce, VOA News, reporting from Washington.